Well, welcome on into Goose Talks Film. I'm your host Goose, and we are covering the new release horror movie Abigail. Well, slightly new release. It has been out for 4 weeks, so dunce over here, you can get mad at me because it's taken me this long to cover it. Unfortunately, when it came out the movies, another session time suited me, unfortunately, but I've now covered it. And if you are watching on YouTube, you will realize that this is the first time where I'm actually doing video. So, uh, give it a go, see how it goes. I did it with the my wrestling podcast, which is currently on hold, but I did it over there. People seem to like it. They can like actually sit and watch me because I'm quite animated when I talk and use my hands a lot. So don't think we're doing any kung fu fighting. It's just me talking. I have very odd bodily movements. But anyway, so there's that. Maybe get used to it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I do record in my podcast. I record my podcast in my man cave. So it all depends on the time of day that I record this because I don't have the very best lighting in here, and I'm working on getting like LED lights and all that. That's good for streaming. But my streaming's still on hold. Twitch, GamingGoose95. Go follow me. I'm gonna make a return quite soon. But yeah, so as you can see, I'm in my man cave. And yeah, we'll see how often I can do this. All depends on, because my camera doesn't really like me filming in the dark. It kind of, it's a bit grainy and pixelated. But anyway, I'll stop rambling because there's more people probably listen to this on podcatchers. So I'll stop rambling about my video and, how ugly I look and stuff. But anyway, we are, covering the new release horror film, Abigail. This is directed by, I literally forgot their name. They have a working name that these two blokes go by, but it's Matt Alpin and Tyler Gillette. They have done quite a fair bit together. They've done the two latest Scream movies in 22 and 23, or 20 and 22. They're the last two. I don't think they're doing the new one because that's just got whole loads of shit wrong with it. But yeah, they've done some really good stuff in the past. They've done Ready or Not, which is a fan favorite among people. They've done the two Screams, which I enjoyed both. Abigail is very similar to the Scream movies for sure, and probably Ready or Not. So these two tend to do a type of horror movie that kind of leans into comedy without being a full-blown horror comedy, which I prefer. I'm not a big horror comedy fan. Might be blasphemy to a lot of people that love that type of stuff. Not really my thing. I like my horror to be not grounded, because a lot of my favorite horror movies are definitely not grounded at all. But I do appreciate movies like this that blend in the humor, and that's what I love about Scream. Like the OG Scream from 1996 is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. It's my equal favorite with House of Wax behind me, and The Burning, which is another 80s slasher movie. But yeah, I think if you're a fan of movies like Scream, Ready or Not, majority of the Screams, I think the fourth one tried to take itself a bit too seriously in terms of that. But other than that, if you're a fan of those types of horror movies, then Abigail is definitely up your alley. It's complete opposite to movies like Late Night with the Devil, Immaculate, and all that. They're all quite serious, and they take themselves very seriously. Same as like Baghead, which I've covered all of them on here. And Abigail, stands out. It's got some very silly, goofy moments, but they are on purpose. Well, majority of it. But we'll touch on the points that maybe weren't intentionally goofy or silly or just flat out ridiculous or making sense. But as we do here on Goose Talks Film, I always recommend a new release horror movie out of 3 categories, which is go see this at the movies, at the cinema, wait until streaming, or don't bother at all. So this has been out for about 4 weeks. So for some people, depending where you live, if you live in like a smaller place like me, the movies aren't out as long. Because, most small cinemas only hold 4 to 6, maybe 7 movies at once, and they turn them over quite quickly because of obviously the lack of theatre space. But if you live in a major city and this is still available to go see at the movies, I think if you're a horror fan, definitely recommend it. It's probably one of my favorites of the year in terms of horror. Probably, I wouldn't say it's my favorite horror. I think there's probably at least one, maybe two that I would prefer over it. But in saying that, this is probably almost the most rewatchable. This might be one I might pull out around Halloween, or one I might pull out with some mates over. This really benefits, would benefit from a group watch. I think would be really fun. A group of horror fans, maybe a few that are, teetering with being horror fans that maybe need to be converted. Don't know if this is going to convert the people that are against horror or anything like that, but I think it's very enjoyable. Look, it has its flaws, has issues, which I'll cover when we get into the spoiler territory. But while we're in the spoiler-free territory, I think this is probably on par with these two. I would. I'd say it's on level with Ready or Not and their two Scream movies. I think they're all definitely on level. I don't think one stands out as the best nor the worst. I think they're all kind of level playing field. If you like vampires, this should satisfy you. I would say it's not your traditional vampire movie without giving anything away. I wouldn't say it's traditional in the sense of following 100% of vampire lore, but there are some really cool moments, and they do use some vampire mythos as good plot devices and create some really good scenes. And they also put their own twist on vampire, which I like movies that if they're not following the traditional lore of vampires that's been around for well over 100 years, then explain it, explain the change that you're doing. I think this movie does a good job of that, except for one thing that I will touch on later. But pretty much while we're still in the spoiler-free territory, it's pretty much all I can say without blabbering on too much. And you probably hear my dog bark in the background, I'm sorry. While I do film this, it is hard to just pause and restart. So I don't do what I usually do when my dog's barking, because this is during the day. And as soon as he hears someone near the house or in the cars, he just barks and lets me know that someone's there. So I apologise if that's coming through the mic. I'm not sure if it does. On Streamlabs, it's coming through, but on Audacity, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, that's all I'll talk about before we get to the spoiler zone. So this is your warning. If you haven't watched the movie and you want to, pause the podcast, go watch it, come back when you've watched it, and listen to my thoughts, and let me know if you agree, disagree, the things you liked and disliked about the movie. Either leave a review or in the comments, or I'm going to open up an option on Buzzsprout, which is my podcasting provider, where you can leave your thoughts and recommendations and whatnot there. So be sure to follow me over there as well on YouTube, because I will be doing my first ever YouTube video next week. I won't reveal what it is, but it's a tier list, ranking movies, which we'll be doing hopefully once a week for the next 6 weeks, and I might change up the type of videos I'm doing. But so this is your spoiler warning. Okay, so I don't know why I did a dramatic pause there. I might as well just, people are going to pause it anyway. But anyway, we're getting there eventually. So as I usually do here on Goose Talks Film, is if the full plot from start to finish, including spoilers and whatnot, is available to me, I will read it. And fortunately, it is available to me again. This is quite a big one. I've had some trouble with, I think, one of the movies I did last week, it kind of, Arcadian, I think it was, starring Nicolas Cage. That left out some important stuff in the last paragraph, so I filled in the gaps. But this looks to be like it's pretty much covering all the major stuff. If not, I'll pick up on it and I'll reveal. But here we go, so bear with me. It's the plot. In New York City, young ballet dancer Abigail is abducted by 6 criminals and brought to the secluded Wilhelm Manor. Before leaving, their leader Lambert instructs them to guard Abigail for 24 hours, at which point they will receive an equal share of a $50 million ransom paid by her father. Using fake names to avoid any member from identifying the others, the group consists of former Army medic and recovering drug addict Joey, former NYPD detective Frank, thrill-seeking hacker Sammy, former Marine sniper Rickles, dim-witted mob enforcer Peter, and sociopathic driver Dean. Though reluctant to continue with the plan as she was unaware the target was a child, Joey is tasked with managing Abigail. Joey is sympathetic to her, sharing that she has a son and promising to protect Abigail from harm. Abigail admits her father does not care about her and will not pay the ransom. Before apologising for what is going to happen to Joey, Perturbed by Abigail's words, Frank violently confronts her, learning that her father is Christophe Lazare, a powerful, almost mythical crime lord. After unsuccessfully flirting with Sammy, Dean enters the basement where he is attacked by an unseen assailant. Investigating his screams, Sammy finds Dean's decapitated corpse. The group realize that Lazare's legendary violent enforcer Valdez might be inside the house and try to leave, but the home security system seals the property, preventing escape. While looking for a way out, Rick was mutilated and killed. The group confronts Abigail for information, but she transforms into a vampire, revealing she is Valdez. Frank shoots Abigail, but her injuries instantly heal and the group flees in terror. They return and ineffectively attack Abigail with tropes of vampiric lore such as garlic and crucifixes, and her strength and speed allow her to easily overwhelm and prevent the group from stabbing her through the heart with wooden stakes. Joey successfully incapacitates Abigail with a tranquilizer and the team imprison her, though not before she bites Sammy. Upon awakening, the centuries-old Abigail reveals that she knows the group's true identities, and arrange for them to abduct her through Lambert so she can kill them for entertainment, as each has wronged her father. Joey deduces that Abigail has killed dozens of her father's enemies in a failed effort to earn her father's love. Abigail effortlessly escapes her confines and attacks Frank, but Joey rips wooden planks off a window to expose Abigail to sunlight, which severely wounds her. With only hours before sunset, the group splits up to find an escape route. God, I'm struggling. But Sammy's transformed into a vampire, thrall under Abigail's control, and kills Peter. Abigail has Sammy attack Frank and Joey, forcing Joey to destroy Sammy with reflected sunlight. Lambert lures Frank and Joey to the hidden security room, where he reveals Abigail turned him into a vampire years earlier for helping Frank avoid Lazare's wrath. Frank allows Lambert to turn him into a vampire so they can work together to kill Abigail and Lazare, but following his transformation, Frank kills Lambert for leading him into Abigail's trap. Abigail attacks Frank, but he overpowers her and drains her blood, leaving her weakened. Cornered, Joey leaves a phone message for her son, apologizing for having been absent from his life for many years. Reveling in his power, Frank bites Joey, intending to turn her into his thrall and force her to kill Abigail and eventually her own son. However, Joey's enthrallment fails due to Frank's inexperience with his new abilities, and she and Abigail team up to kill him. Abigail encourages Joey to leave and be present in her son's life, but Lazare arrives and threatens Joey. Abigail defends Joey for being present when she needed her while Lazare was not. Although Lazare angrily rebukes her, he relents for Abigail's sake and allows the bloodied and battered Joey to leave the end. Take a breath, okay. Yeah, so pretty much, that covered all the major stuff for sure. As you can tell, there's your usual vampire lore here. In terms of using like the mind trick stuff, that's not something we see a lot, especially not these days. It's kind of more so, if we see it, it's more so a person turns into kind of like their minion and they just do what they say because they're under control. But Abigail with Sammy is she actually inhabits her body, and I don't think Sammy has any idea what's going on. And I'm not saying that's 100% original. That I'm sure that's been done before, but I do think it worked well in this movie. I did appreciate that it wasn't the typical, Sammy turning into a vampire or a minion or something like that. That, she literally, I think it says thrall there. I haven't heard that saying before, so that was quite interesting to read it like that. But, I think the cast in this was brilliant. Probably one of my favourite cast of the year. And when I do my end of year awards, which is separate from the top 10 or bottom 10 reviewed movies, whereas the awards will cover pretty much all movies released this year will all be eligible to be nominated. But anyway, more on that later because that'll probably happen in January of next year. But anyway, I could definitely see this movie being nominated for Best Cast or even considered because, great stuff. You have Melissa Barrera, which has worked with these two directors in the previous Scream movies, Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, Will Catlett, Kevin Durand, Angus Cloud, and Giancarlo Esposito. Very sad. When I saw Angus Cloud, I thought he looked very, very familiar, and it probably shame on me because I'm like, oh god, he looks like Mac Miller, but it's not because I know Mac Miller's been passed for quite a while now, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll just quickly look him up. So I paused, maybe look it up, and it was Angus Cloud. I'm like, oh, that's right, he passed away. I'm pretty sure he passed away not long after the movie was finished filming. He died during post production. He died of July last year, and this was obviously released 4 weeks ago. So yeah, that's very sad to see. He was entertaining as such. I think he was definitely overshadowed by the other cars as being the first killed. We didn't really get to see him a lot. Him and Rickles, we didn't get to see a lot because they were sacrificed quite early. The pacing was kind of, the pacing was good, but it was interesting is the word I'll use. Interesting choice to when the killing happens to get killed quite relatively close, and then there's quite a big gap between the next kill, which is fine. It's just when a lot of horror movies start killing multiple people, it kind of flows and it happens frequently, like at a timed level almost. This had a big gap between the two, and then the rest that were killed. Interesting. This is filmed in Dublin, Ireland, which I thought was interesting. I did like. This is what I wanted from Tarot / Horoscope, which I covered a few weeks ago, where I was hoping in Tarot that the movie majority took place in the big, massive, old school mansion that they had rented through Airbnb. Didn't happen. It featured in 2 separate scenes, but this pretty much 99% of the film takes place within this really old. Some of it is decrepit, but it's an old school mansion. It's massive, lots of nooks and crannies and different turns and hallways and stuff. So I thought that was really good. That would have saved in their budget as well. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll find out in the trivia, but I'm not sure if this was all filmed on location or if there were some sound stages used at the studio. I'm not quite sure. But I thought the setting was great. I thought it told a really good story. Because in horror, it's one of those genres where the setting can help tell a story, help push something forward, which I think this definitely did that with its setting. And back to the cast, I think the standouts, probably the 3, which might be unfair to others considering these are probably 3 of the 4 that were given my screen time, but Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, and Kevin Durand were all fantastic and all had my different favourite scenes throughout the movie. They were all quite featured. Then we had Catherine Newton, who has had quite a big year. She's been in quite a few horrors. She was in that, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a Frankenstein movie. It's kind of like a romantic comedy / horror, directed by Robin Williams' daughter Zelda. If you're into cool, different movies that look really good in terms of color palettes and cinematography, give it a watch. But I can't remember the name of it, but it's something Frankenstein, so I apologize. But you look up Zelda Williams, you'll find it. Or even Catherine Newton. But those are your 4, including the young actress that plays Abigail, which I'm searching right now. Alicia Weir. I thought she did a really good job. We didn't really get to see her a lot, funny enough. But Dan Stevens, it just continues to prove why he's one of the most underrated actors. And same goes to Kevin Durand. I mean, this guy's 50. He's been around a long time. And I reckon the first thing I saw him in at the time was Wild Hogs back in 2007. I saw it at the movies with my family. And he was seen still in that. He was hilarious in that. But then I went back and watched some older movies, and he was in Mystery Alaska, which is a 1999 ice hockey movie featuring Russell Crowe. And he was pretty much at the peak of his powers just before Gladiator, in which Gladiator, cemented him as one of the biggest stars of that era. And Kevin Durand, that was his debut film, and he has quite a big role in that in terms of a big cast, but he definitely stands out. He stands out in everything that he does. And he's not even typecast as a villain. He's not really typecast as this type of goofy, dumb character. He's played both before, but they're both obviously very different before. Like when he's played villains, in the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, he's obviously very, very different than his performance in this. Performance of Wild Hogs is very different than this. There's actually a scene that reminded me of Wild Hogs in this, which is hilarious. I don't know if it's intentional. It probably wasn't, but the scene where Melissa Barrera is going around and like her hidden talent is that she can kind of look at someone and guess important things about their life and never really be wrong. And she's guessing and saying everyone's occupation, blah, blah, blah. And there is a, unintentional probably, but it's a callback to Wild Hogs when Ray Liotta's character, the head of the Del Fuego bikie club, is guessing everyone's occupation and, what they're like as a person, their personality is pretty much accurate 100% of the time. It's very funny that Kevin Durant's in this scene. It's probably unintentional, but as a big fan of Wild Hogs and just a big fan of Kevin Durant in general, I thought that was quite funny. It's probably unintentional, but I thought it was quite funny. I did lose my shit laughing at a few scenes. Just after Sammy finds that Angus Cloud is beheaded, she's screaming, and Kevin Durant kind of like he's pretty much in a coma from drinking so much alcohol because they were partying a bit beforehand, excluding Melissa Barrera's character because she is a recovering drug addict, which we'll touch on a bit later. Okay, it's important, but Kevin Durant sprints in as soon as he sees Angus Cloud. He makes like a very weird like noise. It's hard to replicate because I think he's the only one that can do that type of sound. It was hilarious. It was funny. He had some very, very good funny moments, and he plays like a character that's killed people. Like they allude to that he's not only a muscle for a crime family, but he has killed people. But people take advantage of his dumbness and make fun of him because of his dumbness, and that's kind of why he screwed the family over. They were in connection with Abigail's dads, and that's why he was there. But again, we'll get on that later towards when I talk about the ending. But yeah, he has this scene where, because him and Sammy kind of hit it off, and I don't think it's really in like a sexual way. Or at first I thought maybe, but I didn't see it as that after the initial, relationship forming between the two. It was kind of like a big brother, little sister relationship I kind of picked up on between the two. And they protect each other, have each other's back throughout the movie. And when they split off, just before Sammy's turn, because Kevin Durant said, no, I've seen her reflection in the metal plate. She's not a vampire. I've seen her reflection. We all know the law. She's not a vampire. And that is foreshadowing something that happens to Sammy later, which I think is great. This movie does a really good job of kind of telling you, hey, remember this bit, because this is going to be important later. Like, remember this bit, but not so much shoving it in your throat. It's kind of like, here, remember, move on. Like, this movie does a really, really good job of that, and that's probably one of the things I like is the foreshadowing and explaining certain things. It's quite good. But anyway, they have like a little scene where Sammy's starting to freak out because, she's either scared she's going to die or she's going to turn into a vampire. And Kevin Durant's like, hey, look, like he's looking to her eyes. He's comforting her like, hey, look, I've got people that care about me. You've got people that care about you. We're going to be fine. We'll get through this. We'll get each other's backs. Blah, blah. And then he walks off, and then she gets overtaken by Abigail, then literally eats him alive. Pretty much, well, almost eats him alive, which is kind of interrupted by the other two. But I thought, yeah, Kevin Durant's acting with that was great. And then getting on to Melissa Barrera's character, look, at first I was going to say, the cliche character that, they left their kid, but it was for the kid's greater good because she's a drug addict and she's had a hard life, that she's a really good medic, but she was under the influence and stuff. It kind of does feel like an overused character in film in general, but in saying that, it is one of those real life things where it's like, yeah, of course we're going to relate to this woman and we're going to feel sorry for her and we're going to be rooting for her that she does get a second chance with her kid, stays off the drugs and stuff, because it's just a real life thing. Like everyone, like we all know people that have been down that path. Some make it out, some don't. And we all root for those people to make it through and get off that stuff and never touch it again and try and live the life that they want to live and that other people want to live with them. So, of course, you might say it's cliche, which it'd be hard to argue, but to not be able to relate to this character and care for this character and kind of root for her, of course you're going to, and she's pretty much the final girl. We knew that it was going to happen. Like a lot of horror movies since the dawn of time, especially a lot of slashers are so formula based. You'd be like, okay, this person killed first, this person will be second to last killed. They might sacrifice themselves, whatever, and then this is going to be your final girl or your final person. When it comes to slashers, usually final girl. But look, it's the same with this movie, but it didn't really matter too much. I thought, maybe are two people going to survive? Who's the second one going to be? And at first I thought maybe Rickles, but then when they were playing on the fact of her and Rickles saying they trust each other, and you could tell that they were both being genuine, and he was probably the only one there that wasn't like a full slum criminal. He'd obviously done some things being a sniper and stuff, but those are bad things, obviously sniping and killing people, I know. But as opposed to someone like Frank, who's obviously like dirty and doesn't give a shit about anyone else, and Kevin Durant's character who had killed people just for money and because he was told to and stuff, there's probably things you could compare between. But anyway, Rickles was one like, okay, he's probably the most sane one and one you could root for. And I thought, okay, well, they're not going to keep two characters we want to root for alive for very long. One's going to go. And it wasn't going to be Melissa Barrera. They made it clear from all the scenes we've seen of her and her backstory and whatnot, she wasn't going to die. So I was disappointed that Rickles did bite the dust early, unfortunately, but I thought the actor portraying him did a really good job, and he was probably my favourite character from the start, but didn't see enough of him. And then Kevin Durant's character, weirdly enough, even though he's kind of, a murderer, I still kind of, because Kevin Durant, I mean, how the fuck can you not like it? I mean, it's hard, man. But yeah, anyway, I thought Melissa and Rickles had good screen chemistry. I thought maybe we'll see it a bit longer, and I really hoped that we'd see it a bit longer, but unfortunately, wasn't the case. And over to Dan Stevens playing Frank, who, like, it kind of feels as though he put it on, because I'm pretty sure he's British in real life, but this accent, whatever, even if he is American, this isn't his real voice / accent, but he was putting this accent that was like kind of feels like he was on purpose. I don't know, because he does quite a bit of voice acting now. He does solar opposites and whatnot, and he's changed his voice throughout movies. So I think he was just having fun and playing on this, which is fair enough. But when he gets turned to a vampire, he full chews up the scenery, man. Like, he was hamming it up, something chronic. Like, you think of all the over-the-top, not just villains, but like over-the-top just vampire villains, right? He would be up there as whatever you can think of as like the hammiest over-the-top vampire / Dracula, whatever. Put him in that conversation. Like, I don't think anyone's hamming it up or during the series as like any more than him. Maybe as much, but probably not heaps more. Because he full like leans into it and he's loving it, but it works because that's the tone they set from the start. Like I said, it was a horror movie with a lot of blood and gore and violence, but also a lot of funny lines, mainly from Kevin Durant's character, but also a bit from Sammy as well. There's a few funny scenes from the others, but those were the two that mainly were like the comedic characters as such, and a bit of Angus Cloud's character as well. But again, we didn't really see much of him at all in comparison. But yeah, it worked only because they set the tone well that this is the type of movie you're watching. Here's our real villain, like Abigail. Like, I might as well get onto it now because kind of what I'm talking about is my issues with some of the lore and all that. So they mention that Abigail's hundreds of years old because she's Valdez, like she's the muscle for her dad. So she's, hundreds of years. They say hundreds of years. So they didn't say 100, they didn't say 200. Hundreds makes it think more than 200, right? So we all know in terms of vampire lore that the older you are, the stronger you are, the wiser you are, the more powerful, the more things you can do, whatever. As soon as Frank transforms, he kills Giancarlo Esposito's character. Fair enough, he blindsided him, but he still kills him, who has been a vampire only for a couple of years. And then Abigail rushes at Frank, and Frank easily overpowers her and starts to drain blood from her, and then he obviously goes after Melissa Barrera's character. So my gripe with that is Abigail hadn't really been weakened that much other than she'd been shot, but all this stuff happened to her, but she regenerated really quickly. And like her hand was exploded off, but she regenerated the hand back quite quickly. So if those things were all leading into her getting weakened from it, they didn't really do a very good job of telling us that because she was healing like that. So that tells us, okay, she heals, she's healed. Like, she's back to full strength. Like, that's what we see in a lot of other vampire movies. So how the fucking Frank, who's been a vampire for 2 minutes, overpowered this 300-year-old vampire, even though she's a girl? We've seen how strong she is. Like, she was like Rey Mysterio out there kicking asses. Although she was small, she was battering around Frank and Kevin Durant and Melissa Barrera like it was fucking nothing. So I had a gripe with that. And then the ending scene would have made more sense when Melissa Barrera and Abigail had to team up to take Frank out. If that's when Abigail was weakened because Frank had drained her for whatever reason. And she does say, I'll only die if I'm fully drained. So that obviously shows us that every time she's drained of blood, she's getting weaker and weaker. But that hadn't happened yet. That hadn't happened until Frank did it. So how the fucking Frank overpower her? But that's just, that's probably my biggest gripe of the movie, to be honest. And like I said, you don't have to be by the book when you're doing things like vampires and werewolves and, all that type of cryptid type stuff. But if you're going to shy away from what us audiences have been used to for over 100 years, tell us. There's little subtle ways that you can tell us of doing things. Like, it could have been a better job if they're going to change some lore of vampires, then just tell us. Just don't try and pull the wool over our eyes or anything like that. Just tell us what you're changing. That's all I ask, man. That's all I ask. But anyway, we'll touch on the main cast. Like I said, the girl that played Abigail was really, really good. The character's 12. Well, she was meant to be 12, obviously hundreds of years old when it's revealed she's a vampire. That's another small thing, I think, and the trailer gave it away, and also just the premise of itself is, to the characters and also to a degree to the audience, that it's kind of like a whodunit type thing for a bit, is like, oh, who is Valdez? And that could have been a really interesting plot device, is Valdez could have been Abigail's like right-hand man or something, and that could have been revealed to be Frank or someone else in the cast. I think would have been a really cool plot device. And wouldn't have shone away from the main storyline either. But Abigail then being revealed as Valdez, kind of like, okay, well, that's kind of... I expected watching a movie about a girl going around a house killing people. That's what you showed me in the trailer, and that's what we got. But then in the movie, you were trying to tell me that we were trying to guess who Valdez was. And it wasn't done well enough to tell us, the audience, hey, we know you guys know that Abigail is Valdez, but these characters don't know. So we know you know, they don't know. They didn't do a good enough job at separating that. Which there's ways to do it, but they just didn't do that. But look, they're probably my biggest gripes, my biggest negatives, in all honesty. I thought the violence, the gore, and all that was really good. I think it was used well enough, like to the top movie. You're telling a vampire movie, of course it's going to be gory and bloody, especially these days when you're given a bit more leeway to work with in terms of ratings board and whatnot. I thought the blood looked like really, really good. From what I could tell, I think a lot of the blood when it explodes and stuff was CG. Maybe some of it was practical and enhanced in post. But obviously, I think they did a really good job of when the walls are splattered and the characters are splattered with blood. That's obviously practical, and that looked really good as movie blood, I thought. So they did a really good job when you're doing a violent movie, especially a vampire movie, when there's going to be tons of blood. You want the blood to look good, and I think they did a really good job. I thought my favourite kill, there's some really good kills in this, but my favourite kill was, like I said, when Sammy and Kevin Durant walk off and they foreshadow the metal serving plate. And that's what Melissa Barrera uses to explode Sammy when she charges at him, was really cool. And they get covered in blood and blah, blah, blah. I thought it was really, really good. There's really not like heaps. I was scrolling through my notes, but I think I've kind of... as a chef, this fucking made me laugh so much. So when they realise that she's a vampire and they're all not just making shit up, and even Kevin Durant, who's clearly religious, they do a good job of subtly showing us that he's a religious person, that he even believes that she's a vampire. So they're all convinced of vampire. They're coming up with saying, like, what works against vampires. We've obviously seen movies, and then Sammy makes a joke about what type of vampires. Like, there's True Blood vampires, there's Twilight vampires. They're all different, and then they say the usual things: the stake through the heart and garlic and all that. And Frank kind of takes the leadership role back, and he's like, "You do this, you do that," blah, blah. And he goes to Sammy, "You go get garlic from the kitchen." She goes off. They're all still talking. Some other stuff happens, and Sammy comes and holds up a bag and says, "I've found garlic," and it's clearly a bag of brown onions. And Frank goes, "They're fucking onions." Like, just the delivery of the line and the look on Sammy's face, I thought was done really, really well. It's fucking hilarious. I thought it was a really, really good job. That's probably my favorite bit of that. And yeah, we'll get into the ratings as we do here on Goose Talks Film. So I rate each movie out of 4 categories. Each category is rated out of 5, and that goes towards the overall out of 20 score, which will then go towards the end of the year. Like I said earlier, the top 10 reviewed movies on the podcast and the bottom 10. And the 4 categories are directing, writing, acting, and cinematography. So the directing, I think these two do a really good job. Like I always think to myself, like when I see multiple directors working as a team, I think like, how would that work? Like I find it really interesting that if I was directing a movie, I would want full control, and because everyone's got different visions of when they read something on a page, so they think, oh no, let's do this. But I guess when you're also writing the movie together, it kind of helps that you both wrote something, so you both have your own kind of views that share, I guess. But yeah, I thought the directing was good. I thought, the choice of setting and such scenery was good. The use of the cast was really good. I think, me wanting to see Rick was more disappointed that he died was obviously their intention. So that was really good that they created a character with little screen time that we cared we didn't get to see more of, which in horror is really good. You don't see that a lot. And yeah, like I said, the kills are really good. There was not like this. Parts of this were kind of cliche and formula based. I'll just say because that word's wrapping my brain. So 3.25 out of 5, I think is fair. The writing, I thought, the dialogue was probably the highlight. I thought the ending was a bit muddled with the writing. Like I said, this continuity thing with the vampire and Frank overpowering and stuff just didn't sit super well. But yeah, the dialogue was great. I thought they were funny without coming off as like being poorly written or anything like that. So 3.25 out of 5 for the writing. The acting, I'll go 3.5 out of 5. I thought the cast was great. And look, I don't think there's going to be any award winners in this movie or anything like that. And like I said, Frank absolutely hams it up. Like Dan said, Frank hams it up at the end. Kevin Durant's super silly. Melissa Barrera's character is very grounded, but they suit the movie well. They suit the tone of the movie. Great cast. I'll stick with 3.5. The cinematography, 3.25 out of 5 I'll go with. Look, I could see what was going on. It was lit well. It was just kind of your run-of-the-mill cinematography. And I don't mean that in the bad way. That cinematography doesn't always have to be the forefront of everything. You see movies like The Green Knight is one I always use as that was a bit slow, it was boring, the writing wasn't great, but the cinematography makes you want to watch it. Same as Men. Didn't really enjoy that movie from Alex Garland, but the cinematography made me just want to watch that for hours. It's just beautiful. But this, it did its job. So yeah, 3.25. So that gives the final score 13.25 out of 20 for Abigail. So while we finish that up, we'll start to land the plane for the pod. And as I usually do, I'll read the trivia, which I'll find off of IMDb. Some movies have heaps of trivia, some don't. This one seems to have a fair bit, so I'll just try and weed my way through it. Angus Cloud's final role before his passing in July 2023. Although production wasn't completed until months after his death due to the SAG-AFTRA strike, Cloud still managed to film all of his scenes before production was shut down. Okay, so we're actually quite lucky that we saw Angus Cloud's role like completed. So, you know, it kind of, well, it's not really lucky is probably the best word to use with his case, unfortunately, but I guess lucky for the production in a business sense that he had a small role and they were able to finish filming. Still very sad, though. The directors were so impressed by Alicia Weir's dancing that they added more dance sequences to the film. Yeah, I don't know how young she really is. I don't know if she's 12 in real life, but she was fantastic. Tyler Gillette spoke to Empire about Abigail's design and specifically her teeth. We talked about the teeth a lot, he says. We wanted them to look more primal and animal than usual vampire fangs. Abigail's are kind of a teeth, on top of teeth like a shark's mouth. Those apex predators, when they open their mouth, you see they're designed to inflict as much damage as possible. Yeah, the teeth is what stood out to me, is not your typical two fangs. It's like, yeah, like they say, a mouthful of like a predator's teeth. Like, I did think of sharks straight away, so that definitely, come through the screen from their point of view to the audiences. So, yeah. Calling the frightened, kidnapped child version of a character Abby, the alpha predator Abigail helped Alicia Weir approach the character as two entirely separate people. For scenes where she plays Abigail, she even altered her voice to sound more like a confident adult. Yeah, you can definitely tell she's very talented. Like I said, no matter how old she is, if she's a bit older than 12 in life, but she's definitely young. Like she's younger than 18. She's very, very impressive. Like I can tell that she's separated two characters because it comes through on the screen. So great. In an interview with Total Film, the directors felt they needed to apologise to the cast for the volume of blood they used on set. They said, all of our movies are bloody, but I would say that this is definitely the most bloody. We spent a lot of time apologising to our actors on the movie. I mean, blood is in the DNA of a vampire movie, and the amount of blood work in this one is pretty extreme, but it's still fun. Yeah, ton of blood, like I said. Abigail tells Frank that access to the secret escape route can be found via the library, with the lever being activated by pulling the book, and then there were none. This already hints that Abigail is misleading Frank. Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None is a story about a group of strangers locked up in a remote house getting picked off one by one, not dissimilar to what is happening in the characters in the movie. In real life, Dan Stevens also narrated an edition of the book. Okay, that's pretty cool, too. I didn't realise the last bit about Dan Stevens, but yeah, when she says, then there were none, one, I knew that, okay, well, she's obviously telling him bullshit, but obviously he's not going to be dumb enough to let her out. And second, that's obviously a nice hint to what the movie is maybe remotely based off. Kind of, I guess, a lot of movies are set in a one location where people are getting picked off one by one can all be dated back to Then There Were None. It's a great, great book. Read one more. Catherine Newton admitted that filming the scene in the pool of bodies was the hardest day she's ever had on set, revealing it was really difficult. It was the hardest day I've ever had on set, and I considered myself athletic. I consider myself a professional athlete, but I knew that I wanted to make everyone really proud. I hope people like it because I was thinking about the audience, and I was like, do not underdeliver. Don't go there. And so every time I was like, go, and I hope people like it. Yeah, I thought she was a standout as well. I mean, it's hard to not say everyone's a standout in this cast because they all did such a great job with the roles that they were given specifically. And yeah, Catherine Newton was great. I look forward to seeing her in more things throughout the future. People talk about Sydney Sweeney. Like I brought up the Sydney Sweeney thing in Immaculate that I don't get all the hype and stuff around it. I think she's a decent actress, but in terms of me wanting to follow people's careers and whatnot from one role I've seen, like Catherine Newton, when I saw her in this, I'd seen her in things before, but this was kind of the one where I was like, oh wow, I can't wait to see where she takes her career. And you know, horror's horror. I want to see her do more horror because I love her in horror. I think she does a really good job. But in terms of her career, she's obviously going to want to outsource. But yeah, that's the trivia. We'll leave it there, and we'll end the podcast here, guys. As always, thanks for listening, watching now. Please let me know in the comments or in a review what you think of the video version. And yeah, like I said, if you were listening to this on pod, but you prefer to watch it, then I hope to be doing this as much as I can over on YouTube. But as always, you'll be able to listen to this anywhere you can. And stay tuned, middle of next week, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll be doing my first actual video, which will be me, reviewing certain movies and putting them in tier list from best to worst and whatnot. So, yeah, make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to YouTube. You get the notifications, hit that bell so you don't miss out on new videos coming. And, make sure you're liking me and following me on all social media. I'm always under Goose Talks Film. And like I said, make sure you head over to my Twitch, which is gamer_Goose95. I'll be doing some more content over there soon. Hopefully just some game playthroughs of games. Can't even speak. Mainly horror games with Killers. Was that say Killers of Flower Moon? Imagine they made a fucking game about that. It'd be like 400 hours long. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The game will be coming out soon, so I'll be playing that over on Twitch. So make sure you follow Sam, have notifications on so you're notified when I go live. But anyway, as always, guys, this has been Goose for Goose Talks Film, and make sure you watch those movies. I will catch you later.